What's up guys, so I've been thinking of doing a new series on this channel and it's the one you're watching now. This is the Criterion Collection. I play on the Criterion Collection, and if you're not familiar with that, it's a collection of movies with some significance to cinema. The Criterion Collection will be a collection of films that have a significance to me. I'll be talking about them and gushing over them, not entirely reviews, just films I want an excuse to talk about. So the first entry in the series is going to be Chef from 2014. So Chef was written and directed by Jon Favreau, who most famously directed Iron Man and helped launch the Mandalorian universe. I think he's honestly severely underrated as an actor, writer and director for a multitude of reasons and projects, but none of them sum up his potential like this one. He plays a divorcee celebrity chef who came up massively in the world, but after a bad review from a famous critic and his lack of control in the kitchen, he decides to run a food truck with his friend and sous chef along with his son. One of the things that stands out as so special in this film is how Casper and Favreau's lives seem entirely connected. My friend Devon actually put me onto this, so shout out to him, but the more I thought about it, the more it all added up. See, Jon Favreau at a time was a promising young writer and director. He made it all the way up to starting and kicking off the MCU for Christ's sake. And like Casper, this notoriety meant they had to work with higher ups that could put them into better positions. But those better positions came with a sacrifice, and that sacrifice would be control, and ultimately both of them failed due to this. Casper couldn't change the menu and got slated for it and demolished by a critic. Favreau had little creative control on Iron Man 2, and it was universally panned by critics and audiences alike. Casper, not knowing what to do or how to handle a public failure of this size, gets convinced by his ex-wife to start the food truck so he can cook what he loves and find his passion again. Favreau decides to do a smaller budget and more heartfelt film that he believed in and found his passion for filmmaking again. Then Casper finds his love and that same critic turned around and bought into him again. Favreau released this movie and the critics were back on his side. But what's interesting is the future that he may have accidentally predicted, because in the end of Chef, Casper ends up owning his own restaurant and cooking whatever he wants, whilst Favreau years after this film's release became the head of The Mandalorian and all shows along with it. Him and Filoni becoming partners and creating the Star Wars content they want. I'm slightly worried that Favreau is falling back into the MCU cycle. However, the reviews are getting a little more dim, the direction of his show is getting a little bit more controlled by producers, and his shows are obviously heading to a certain junction, and I hope to God he doesn't get trapped in another big budget franchise, losing his passion. I know this is slightly off topic, but it's hard to talk about Chef without talking about Favreau. He's just so connected with it, like how he's a child of divorce, and that prompted him to make Casper a divorcee, who finds his way to connect with his child and eventually reignite the flame with his ex-wife. Probably hinting towards Favreau's early hopes in childhood, just wanting his family to have been repaired. It's beautiful and a creative way to live vicariously through your work whilst not egotistically making it into a biographical vanity project. Going into the actual film, the cast is despicably brilliant. Every single character is perfectly cast for exactly what their personality required. Jon Favreau has always been perfect at casting in his films, and this is probably the greatest cast overall. From himself, of course, being so close to the character, he understood the psychology excellently, and it's proven in the actual meltdown scene.
And what do? You just write shit to you just make shit up. My shit was molten. It's fucking molten. Asshole. You're not getting to me. Okay. You're not getting to me. Okay.
Sofia Vergara brings an absolute vibrant and gorgeous aura to her character of Inez. She's funny as she always is, but plays caring and sensitive to her fullest extent, and I think she's truly one of the most underrated actresses in our time. She gets typecast a lot, and that's a gross miscarriage of potential. John Leguizamo is my personal favourite casting. He brings an energy that vibrates throughout this entire feature that is so insanely watchable. His chemistry with not only Favreau but Bobby Cannavale, who plays Tony, is electric. Their comedic exchanges are the best relief in the high tension moments, and their everyday conversation is natural and massively engaging. MJ Anthony as Percy is great. He plays the role well, and I'm sure he got a lot of advice from the older cast, but especially Favreau himself, since I assume Percy was loosely based on himself. The smaller roles in Scarlett Johansson, Oliver Platt and Dustin Hoffman are excellent, and they all have at least one great scene that truly displays their best character work, but above and beyond the best minor role that sticks with you is Jon Favreau's good buddy in Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. Though it's a small cameo for one scene, Downey plays a great comedic relief character that I'm sure is a breath of fresh air for him because he could just have fun with it, which you can clearly see he is. Plus, his pre-existing chemistry with Favreau from the MCU carries over heavily. And that's just the performances. All of the cast is massively aided by the great script penned by Favreau, possibly his greatest to date. Actually, you know what, scratch that, it is his greatest to date. It's witty, heartfelt, and more unconventional than you'd think. The first time I showed this to my girlfriend, she actually didn't enjoy it because post getting the food truck, she was waiting for the typical 70% drama or heartbreak or problem or fallout. She was dreading something bad happening like nearly every movie typically chooses to do to make the finale that much sweeter, but this film opts for a straight ride to the finish, a consistent uphill journey all the way to the end, and it makes for a very satisfying watch. But since our second watch through, it's become one of my girlfriend's favourite films and it's easily become our go-to when we need something to watch. It is the pure experience of a feel-good movie and everything beyond the first act is the definition of it. But the writing doesn't just create great characters which inspires great performances. The writing demonstrates the reality of familial relationships too. Divorces aren't always messy and divorcees aren't always bitter. They can get along and even be friends. Arguments between parents and children aren't always dramatic and huge. They don't last a long time a lot of the time. Your parents' friends often feel like your uncles and aunts, and the way parents interact with their children is sometimes very casual and relaxed as opposed to the cinematic atypical overbearing or absent. I just think every relationship is casually displayed as brilliant, even down to how friends talk to each other. Snarky, mean, but in a well-meaning and loving fashion. It's just casual and relaxing to be around, even with some of the more surreal characters like Marvin. There's real emotional basis and story progression from it, but also the way Cole reacts grounds the situation because he acts as an audience surrogate in those situations. And the writing and cast are accompanied by two things that really bring this all together because, being honest, the directing isn't very ambitious and the cinematography isn't particularly special, but the music accompanied with the locations is absolutely everything. The Spanish music that carpets the soundtrack is so vibrant and gives the film a special identity that every time I hear these songs otherwise, I think of this movie. Even the non-Spanish songs are so specific to the vibe, like Al Green, Tired of Being Alone. It's very particular and doesn't opt for just your everyday pop songs or even easily accessible songs by 2010 standard like the 70s soul, like 60s Spanish boogaloo, like old funk and jazz, and these songs are accompanied by some of the most lively and beautiful locations like New Orleans or Miami. It shows us food culture in every place it visits and shows us the real beauty of every corner of their destinations. But there's one thing I've yet to mention, one very big factor in all of this, and that's the food. Oh my lord! This food looks fucking peng. Every dish that gets served in this movie looks delicious and there's a lot of it. Not just any one type of food either, it never feels pretentious or snobby about fine dining. It shows us fine dining food, but it also shows us Cuban sandwiches and how even they are really an art. They even have a small joke about popcorn, but that joke shows us that even that has value in the culinary world. This film just brings a real sensitivity to the art of food and makes the audience appreciate it so much more. There's a scene where Cole makes Percy a grilled cheese, and when he's making it, it's like it's the only thing that exists in the world. Jon Favreau must have gotten a real appreciation for food because 1, the directing is at its best when it's filming the food, and 2, he went on to make that chef show afterwards, which is amazing by the way. Now I could sit here and lecture you about every fine detail possible about this film, about the little moments, the nuances of the relationships, about the performances, even about the funny little moments like the Iron Man nod when they're in the cinema. That isn't what this series is about. That isn't what I want to do, because though that's what makes this film incredible, that's not what makes it special to me. I love this movie so much, and though it's the first in this Criterion Collection, it isn't in any way my favourite movie. But I think this film perfectly encapsulates what I'm trying to do with this series. Shed light on films I believe are fantastic that rarely ever get the shine on YouTube or in any real film discussion platform. It's a crying shame that it isn't discussed as widely as it deserves to be, because this film truly is a love letter to passion. And anybody that has ever been passionate about anything can relate to these characters, to this story in some way. So that's why it's going to be the first in the Criterion Collection. So have you seen Chef? If so, let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think of this video. I read every single comment and reply to as many as possible, and whether it's this beautiful and delicious movie or not. As always, keep watching movies.